Now I'd like to turn to our My Bill for the month. This is something that we do once a month. It's very special to me because I really believe seeing what other people have built and having them talk about it really is a stimulant for all of us. So Greg Cassidy is replacing Chris Course tonight. Chris got called to work and he's not going to be available. So Greg, I will now turn it over to you, sir, and I appreciate you filling in for Chris tonight.
All right, Jim, I'm happy to do it. Chris got pulled on some duty of flying some people somewhere again, and sometimes he just can't get out of it. So welcome to my build. This is the one for September. This my build is featuring you, and the next my build will be in October. I guess Chris didn't have the date. So it's hosted by me. He put these slides together. I know everyone is here except for one person when we get to him. So our first modeler up is Ed Cady. Ed, are you there?
Yes, I am.
All right. Why don't you tell us about your bridges?
All right. Well, actually, if you go to the first, your first slide, to where it says the beginning of your slideshow. Yeah, keep on going, all the way to the beginning.
Up here?
Yes.
See this one down here.
Yes, that is the lower. That's sort of like the first time you saw the bridge, without pretty much not that much scenery. It's basically the scenery was just a paint of brown paint. But now if you go back to the other slide, now you can see where I've added rocks. I've been making small little dioramas, mainly because I'm not very confident in my scenery skills yet. So I'm making small little dioramas before I actually add it to the actual layout, which actually it's sort of peeking in the background a little bit. And basically what I wound up using was I wound up buying a Woodland Scenics mountain kit. I was actually looking for the river kit, but they didn't have the place I was at didn't have that. So I bought the mountain kit, and so that's where the green turf came from. The little the gray rocks, the buff or tan blocks are actually from an aquarium kit. And then I also wound up using buff ballast for the regular stuff and all that. And here's more pictures. The lower picture is actually the back end of the scene. That's why you can see the top Romaine, not sponsored in the background and all that. But I'm not fully happy with it, but it's one of those things. That's why I'm building these dioramas. So I, eventually will like to see exactly what actually happens with it. And then here's some more pictures. Now, for eagle-eye viewers of and longtime viewers of this show will recognize the Congoino models, box cars and flat cars.
And I know you're modeling what, the 1870s, 1860s?
Originally when I started this, it was the 1870s. And then about back in July, somebody was doing a thing on bicentennial. So I'm like, wait, the centennial fits right in the 1970s. So I'm pretty much trying to. My time frame now is basically the centennial.
Okay, yeah, which I expect means you have to make a lot of your own stuff that you can't find commercially.
That is correct. And speaking of not making things that are not available commercially, The bridge is a Hunter Line Queen Post bridge.
Mhm.
And the interesting thing is I haven't added grass on this. This is not fully finished yet. But one of the interesting things is that in the instructions of the bridge, they also have the instructions for the narrow gauge bridge. Interestingly, the narrow gauge bridge is an actual standard gauge. The standard gauge bridge that they have, like that I got, is actually widened a bit for the NMRA gauge.
Oh,
NMRA's classes. So it's actually a broad gauge bridge.
huh.
So what I wound up doing, if you look at it, well, I mean, I can look at it here. I can look at it here, and sort of, it's pretty obvious that it's wider than standard gauge. It's actually 6-foot gauge. So
Wow.
it's HOW6 or HOB6. I'm not quite sure what the terminology is for it. But the interesting thing is that the guardrails are actually standard gauge.
Huh.
So I'm assuming there's more pictures, one with locomotive
Yes.
on the bridge.
Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, I was
Now,
going to ask how it looks with your locomotives going over it.
yes. Well, the thing is, if you notice, if you look really closely, the locomotive's on the guardrails. It's not on the actual 6-foot gauge.
Ah.
Now, the interesting thing is, from what I understand with this particular model, this is an old Tyco model, but it's not HO scale. It's, I think, 176 scale. So it's a little bit larger, but the thing is, a broad gauge locomotive would be larger. It's actually, if you put a scale ruler across it, it actually comes out to be 11 foot wide. That's why when you put this locomotive next to a standard, an HO scale model, it looks too large because it is too large. So my idea on the locomotive is to find some way to. I actually wound up buying a lathe so I can actually turn around and broaden the wheel sets on it so it actually fit the 6-foot gauge. And another thing is, I think I have to lower the cab and possibly make the tender a little bit shorter. But keeping the length. But that's
So you have a lot of metalworking in your future.
yeah, I got to learn how to do that first before I can do that, or before I can build stuff and all that. But right now, I just wanted to see about getting the learning on how to do the tracks first. The track is also code 55 because of code 100. I mean, even looks oversized for mainline stuff. But
yeah, and when you're dealing in your period, probably code 55 is the biggest they would be using then.
Yes, and also, it's a fun fact, it seems that's also the same code 55 is also used in N scale. So was able to use, I think on this one I actually used N scale track, removed the ties, and then I actually made a 6-foot gauge out of a tongue depressor to making sure that it's gauged correctly. But that's one of those things of there's no standard broad gauge in the United States as far probably I would think of.
Okay, Ed, before I open it to other questions, this
Sure.
one is a Hunter Line bridge. What about this one? Did you build this from scratch, or is this a kit?
No, that's the Hunter Line trestle.
Okay.
Not the post one, the squared one. I actually this trestle I actually followed when they were Marine was putting it together and all that.
Great.
The Queen Post Bridge was I built that the same time they were doing the King Post Bridge, but I
Mhm.
wanted something a little bit wider or a little bit longer than the King Post. So I went with the Queen Post instead, but followed the instructions.
Yeah, well,
And
you don't want your locomotive in the river, of course.
yeah, absolutely.
All right, do
And
we have
if
any
you,
questions for Ed?
well, actually, if you back up one, I think, yeah, if you
Uh-huh.
back up, no, two, or correction, three. All right. If you look on the top picture,
Mhm.
behind the cars, you can see the part of the covered bridge that I did that I for some reason my phone did not send to Chris. So that's
Right,
what it's that's gonna be for the next my build.
okay. And
And
that's the Hunter line also? That's the one they just finished, right?
that's the one they just finished. And
Awesome.
I made it so it was more one with a removable roof on it, because
Uh-huh.
all these models are actually not really attached to the diorama,
Mm-hmm.
mainly because I want to be able to take them out and put them on. If I wind up having a layout where I can put them on there, I can turn around and put them on the layouts.
Nice.
And I think Daryl Jacob in the chat has put
Mhm.
down probably 6-foot gauge, and he is correct. And the interesting thing is HO scale, 6-foot gauge HO scale is sort of like SN3 with HO gauge, where it doesn't quite fit, SN3 does not quite fit HO scale track. The HOW6 or 6-foot gauge is 1 millimeter short of S gauge.
Wow.
What wouldn't quite fit
And that's
anywhere.
just here in the United States. If we started throwing in TT and other things.
Yes. Well, and the interesting thing is that I did find out that there is the Broad Gauge Society that does broad gauge stuff. However, it's the Burnell 7-foot gauge
Uh-huh.
over in England.
Wow.
But yeah, if anyone has any questions, I mean, I'll do my best to answer them. I'll even sneak
All
over
right.
to,
Well, thanks, Ed, and I look forward to seeing the covered bridge next month.
yes, absolutely.
All right. Next up, we have Martin Brickbill. Martin, hello. I know you're here.
Yeah,
And you were right. You have two vehicles in this one for
yeah, I was
4
expecting this
slides.
one second, but we'll go first.
Mhm.
Well, it doesn't matter.
It's all
Okay.
relative.
Yeah, let's not get quantum physics involved in this yet. This is something I have not built. Actually, this is something that was handed to me a couple of years ago, as a reward for helping price out an estate. But I saw this in the one box of stuff, and there were many, 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 many boxes of stuff. And I spotted it and picked it up, and I said, I don't believe it. It's one of these. And the guy I was doing this for said, well, here, you take this. And I thought, wow. And what this is a coal hopper motor trolley. It's a trolley car for hauling coal. And this one actually has a prototype. So this is, I recognize this from the picture in the book. There's a book called Not Only Passengers. It's one of the CERA trolley books. I don't remember what number, 129 or something like that, plus or minus 30. But there's actually a picture of this car in there. And the prototype is from the Androscoggin and Kennebec Railway. And this is actually it looks a little crude, but in real life, these cars were kind of crude. They were apparently built locally. I don't think anybody actually designed and built these things for them. And they had at least two and probably three. I found pictures of two different ones. I think it's 6 652 and 654. Not that I think that they actually had 600 pieces of equipment, but those were the two numbers. So there's probably one. 653 is probably the one that's in between that I haven't found a picture of. So I have a lot of work to do on this car. Obviously, there's no trucks. There's no poles. There's a lot of details missing on the sides.
Mhm.
The ends aren't quite right. That curved piece, the prototype actually did not have a radial coupler curved piece on the front of it. So that all comes off. The doors are missing. The windows are missing. So those are going to be fun on the side. There's a door on each side. There's a window on each side. And there's no hatch or anything on the bottom. The coal had to get dropped out of it somehow. So I have no pictures of that. So that's going to be a complete fabrication on my part out of fantasy, but I think should go there. What is not underneath of it are all the, there we go. There's the pictures. There's nothing underneath there at the moment. In fact, there's some scars where the bolsters were inset into the body. So I'm going to have to repair and rebuild the entire underbody to work with it. One coupler, well, that's going to go away. That little machine screw on the one side is actually holding a compressor casting. That's going to come out temporarily at least. So all the underbody parts you normally see on trolley cars, they're going to have to go somewhere behind the cab underneath the slope sheets of the hopper. I have no idea what goes in there. There's also some mechanisms in there. The one photo I found, you can see some gearing and a latch of some sort that probably operates the hatch. So there's probably some mechanism, levers, gears, wires, jiggery pokery, whatever you have you operating that, which I'm going to ignore because I don't know what it looks like and I don't know where it goes. And I'm betting nobody else does either. The rest of it looks pretty much correct. So
it looks like a project right up your alley, Martin.
well, it's going to be a project. It's going to be 3 or 4 issues of Scale Trains magazine in my column next year. So we'll be back next year to look at that. Oh gosh, there's the other one, a wooden covered hopper, which I built merely out of whimsy. I just felt like doing it. This is what happens when you have space on your bench and too many 3x9s laying around in a bundle and some other odds and ends. So if you're not careful, the demons creep out and say, "Oh, just build this for fun. You'll like it." And it was a lot of fun. I mean, it's a lot of individual boards. There's some scribe siding on the roof, but all the rest of it are individual boards. And there's a full underbody underneath it somewhere. And I think, there's the hatches. I'm going to probably steal those hatches and put them underneath the coal hopper or something to that effect. So those are built out of all kinds of little pieces of angles and Z's and channels and hinges from other hopper cars. But again, just something to do that's fun. And I think this is back around April when I was in a frenzy doing something or other and decided, well, I don't have enough on my bench. Let's do 3 other cars at the same time. That's almost normal. But, if you're not building something, I mean, there's something wrong. So I think that's where I am this month. I don't know if there's any more.
So that
slides.
old saying of no project is ever completely done. When you take these hatches off of this car to put on the motor trolley, you'll need more hatches on this car.
No, I'm not going to physically transfer them off of this. I'll just make a copy. I'll just pull this car out, flip it over and say, "Oh, that looks good. Let's do something like that." It's easier just to make another one. And I have all the parts. It's just styrene and hinge castings and some other odds and ends. The hatches on the roof, they're just some of my own resin castings anyhow. So, I mean, I have the parts laying around. And I think maybe a third of what I do in building is just to use up all the parts that are laying around, just to get them out of the way. And then I go and make, and then I break out 2 pounds of resin and make 2 pounds of parts.
It keeps you busy. Do we have any
It
questions
keeps
for
me
Martin
off
on
the
either of
street.
these?
Martin, quick question.
Yes.
The doors there appear to drop across the tracks.
Yeah.
Would there be any mileage converting them to a side mount door?
Yep.
So the doors actually drop down parallel with the tracks, and you dump your load that way.
Could do that.
Okay.
I was looking at a wooden hopper that had side doors underneath of it at one point, thinking there's a fun project to get involved with someday. So, winter is coming. I'll build another 20 or 30 cars between April next year. So, it's only a mild amount of hyperbole involved there, because my wife came down and helped me sort out the boxes of cars, because I ran out of 4x4 by 12 inch boxes, and I buy them 50 at a time. And I have all the shorter cars will go in the 4x4 by 10 inch. So we're sorting everything out and pulling, the short cars out, put them in the short boxes. And then I have room for, I have 12 inch boxes for the larger cars. And we got done, and I've got about, let's see, there's about 90 boxes on the floor behind me on the other side of my table. So that's the last year's exercise in building.
Okay.
The year's not over. I've got another hopper car on the one bench right now, and a badly damaged, I think it's a Glorcraft Penzi cabin car, which will be completely unrecognizable by the time I get done with it.
Uh-huh.
Martin, you never sleep.
Less
So
than
Martin,
I
do you take these to shows and sell them, or do you just use them as your stock?
I'd say a third of them disappear to shows. I have serious separation anxiety at times. It depends how much I've actually put into something. If I've put an awful lot into it, I've built it stick by stick from the ground up, it's sometimes hard to let go of it. Those things that aren't so involved, it can probably go away. And they do. I mean, eventually I pull things off the shelf and off the floor and say, I can do without that. So, I'm the Strasbourg O-Scale meet's showing up in, let's see, it's on the 15th of October. So I'll probably fill an extra tub of stuff that I've decided that it can all find a new home. And most of the time it does, but some of it comes back. It can't find a new home some days.
All right, thanks, Martin. Tony Dixon, you are up next.
All right.
Hi,
Sorry,
Tony.
no video tonight. So this is a modified wooden grain elevator kit that I've been working on for a customer. It'll be on his National Farm Toy Show display. The main wood house is an S-scale kit. I can't remember the company right now, and the box isn't in front of me. And then the brick portion is all scratch built.
Ah,
And then just some additional details in the dump pit area that are not part of the kit.
and so
sliding
this is,
doors and controls and all that good stuff.
tell me more what this is going to go on.
I have a customer that competes at the National Farm Toy Show in Dyersville, Iowa, the first weekend in November. And he is doing a display that will be a grain elevator complex that this and the mill that I previously showed and a few other structures will all be part of. And he'll actually have some track on this one. It'll be the first one he's done with any railroad track on it, and it'll have actual S-scale track on it, and it's just going to represent a modern Oklahoma grain elevator complex when it's all said and done.
So this part we see here would be where a truck would pull in, I guess, and dump it.
Correct.
Dump its grain.
Correct. This is the alleyway on
Very nice.
the truck unload side. And it has the control box in it for running the elevator and stuff without having to step in the alleyway where the door is. And then the other box with what looks like wires coming out are actually cables. And that's to change the location to where the grain is going in the elevator itself. It goes in the dump pit, goes into a elevator up to the head house, which is the tallest portion of the building. And it has a distributor underneath with a swing gate, and the yellow control seen to the right in the upper right hand picture is basically a big hand crank with a cable coming out each side of it, and you step on a foot pedal on the floor to unlock it, and which the cable runs all the way up into the building to unlock it, and you crank that until it's in the position according to the indicator on which bin or conveyor it's being dumped into, and you release it and lock it in, and that's how it makes the grain go to where it goes. And after 20 plus years of working on this stuff in real life, it comes in handy when building it to scale.
The brick part that you scratch built, what did you build that out of?
It is a 060 styrene core coated with or covered with a layer of JTT Plastics HO scale brick, which happens to scale out properly for S scale if you measure the physical brick on the pattern. And then the sliding doors are evergreen plastics, I believe 0100 spacing V-groove siding. The roof is evergreen plastics, 0100 spacing corrugated steel. And then the walk door on it actually came with a Woodhouse kit, but it's a Grant line door. While the other doors on the Woodhouse kit, the walk door that you see on the lower portion where the truck dump is one that I designed and 3D printed. And then there's on the side view, which I don't believe I took a picture of. Yeah, you don't see, it's just out of the frame off the lower right-hand photo. There's another walk door that I 3D printed.
That's very nice. And so in S-scale, how big is this overall, would you say?
It is 14.5 inches long, and I think just over 9 inches from the rail side to the edge of the dump pit. The main head house portion is 5 7/8 inch square, and 13.5 inches to the peak.
All right, very nice. Do we have any questions for Tony about this?
Thanks so much, Tony. That really is a great looking model. We appreciate you showing it to us.
Yeah, and I know your friend's going to appreciate it. Hope he does well.
Yep.
All right, next up we have Phil. Phil, you there?
I sure am. Yeah,
all right. And we've got a bunch of slides of your, I don't know if they're all of the pier or if he has more than.
it's actually not the pier. It's actually the building on the pier.
Okay.
So the pier is still under construction, et cetera. And I'll come back because I actually didn't put in the picture of the prototype. So when I started building this wharf, I concluded that I needed something beyond just, there's a basically a cannery fishery to the right of this you can't see. And I came across some pictures of the Standard Oil Pier in Monterey. And so basically there were a couple of piers that stuck out from the main pier. I actually got an aerial photo that kind of shows them. and they were piers where the fishing boats went to get gas. Turns out that when there was an Italian, there was a big Italian community, they were all from Sicily. When they came in, when they did a family outing on the boat, they brought the whole family. And it turns out that they've got these pictures of these fishing boats, literally with 150 people on them. And the place they could take a picture was by this pier. So there's some good pictures. When I get the pier done, I'll show you the pictures. So anyway, this is about a 3/4 size, pretty reasonably exact replica of the building on the outside. Go ahead and jump to the next slide. And it looks pretty reasonably well as a model. You see some reasonable interior detail and it's lighted. Go ahead and just jump to the next slide. There's a bunch here. One of the things I really try to do, this is on a module, and you can kind of see in the left slide that the pier is right at the end of the edge in a module where people come up really close. And one of the things I think really amazes people is to look in the window of a building and see, you know, a table with tools and magazines on it, a phone, and then there's a rack where the orders for oil for the different fishing vessels can be put in. I'm going to jump to the next one. So this whole thing, the framing and the building are all 3D printed. And the roof is actually removable. So you just kind of pick it up by the sign and you can take it off. And you see on the left is that the roof was not printed as a single print. It's printed on a filament printer, and then it's actually printed as a bunch of pieces. And I've got a slide on that in a moment. Go ahead and jump to the next one.
Wow.
So this is actually the interior. Hang on just a second. My wife. Best time to call, right? So basically what you see on the right is what it looks like. The light frame is actually printed as a frame, and it's got the wires, the lighting on the sides. Eventually there are going to be some exterior lights off of this. They're not done yet. What you see on the left is a couple of pictures of the interior before the light frame was put in. Basically the cabinets and everything inside except for the chairs were 3D printed. Go ahead and jump the next slide. So this again is another shot of the interior. This is the big cabinet at the back. And basically all of the images there were generated in PowerPoint doing a very large slide that I'd scaled based on the size of the slide down by a 4x6 photo. So by doing that, you basically create a very large high resolution image. And I actually had a local Photoshop print it for me at 600 DPI. So it's pretty accurate. And then the rest are just boxes. And I did again some prints for some of those for the ends, and some of the others are just printed in a smaller, again, are just printed on paper. Go ahead and jump to the next one. So this is the way this is built. And part of the reason I wanted to do this way is I'm trying to create something you almost never get on a model, which is the reality of the depth of how you frame a building. So what you see on the left is actually the parts for this building. And so this is O scale, so it's a building that's 3 inches by 2 inches. So it's fairly small. And part of this for me was trying to try out these techniques for some other things I'm planning to do. So what you see is the upper 4 pieces there are the 4 walls. And the way they were printed was that you have the basic framing of the walls, and then you have the diagonal supports are printed on top of that. And it's really easy to pull off the supports on the bottom of those. So they hang free and clear. So, you know, if you kind of look at this lower right picture, you can kind of see that those are behind all the other pieces. And then the lower 4 pieces are what you normally get for furring strips when you have a siding wall on. And those were made using exactly the same shape, but then where the interior is actually laid out horizontally. So when you glue those on the outside, what you get is a wall that actually has 3 layers of dimension. And that's, you know, if you look at those interior pictures, and it's hard to get a picture of this, but if you jump back a couple of pictures, I should have put these in a different order, but you kind of look at the one on the right there with the lights. And you can see there's a gap between what's essentially the stud and the wall, and then the layer on top of that. So you've got, and that was the creation of depth that I was really trying to get, that you don't see normally in a model because it's very hard to create. Anyway,
well, and Phil, I can see how it's created with the upper center picture here where you have those two pieces that would overlay
Yep.
each other, and that's where you get the real depth to it. That's incredible.
And so this is actually, the upper center is important. When you print this stuff, it actually turns out the vertical up and down gets layered because of the layers in a filament printer. But you now have a clean surface that's going to be on the interior of the building. What I do is I give them about 4 coats of what's called filler primer. Buy it in a can at Home Depot, spray them with about 4 coats of that. And what it ends up doing is it ends up building up a layer that you can actually cut away with a razor brush or the razor straw, and you actually get a wood shape on the top of these. So it's hard to see it. I didn't take a picture really up close like that. Anyway, go ahead and jump to the next one.
Well, in the finished pictures, I could see how you had wood grain in it, and I was thinking that was incredible for being printed like that.
Yeah, and that's how you get it, is by doing that. So this is the roof, and up on the upper left are the pieces. The pieces of the roof that actually have the furring that supports the aluminum. Those are actually have to be kind of matched, because they're not actually the same, because of the offset of the way the joists are set up and where they hit. But they're basically laid out, and then there's actually, if you kind of notice the upper right picture, there's a jig there to hold it together, and I used that, except when I got ready to glue these, I ended up I clamped the jig into the glue point at that point. So you see on the bottom left, the roof before the aluminum siding was put on. Jump to the next one. So it's kind of built more like a model. So that's kind of the end picture of it, back on the dock and lighted. So anyway, that is it.
What kind of glue were you using, Phil?
I pretty much use canopy glue for everything.
Okay.
And the windows are microscope cover glass, which I find for these size windows, I'm not sure you could use it in HO. It'd be really a challenge. But in O, it's reasonable. And what I did was I picked the original building. The picture of the original building has fairly large windows. And I picked fairly large windows, and I mounted them higher in the wall, justifying that they use it for light. But it's predominantly so people, when they walk by, can see inside the building and see the points there. So, and by the way, all the exterior signs here and the interior signs were all done the same way on a 4x6 photo. And the Standard Oil stuff was cut out, and then the edges are all painted. The sign on the top was actually printed as 2 pieces, so it's inset where the print goes into. So it ends up looking like a pretty cool building. And the neat thing is, if you're there talking to someone, you can always reach over and take the top off and look down inside of it. So
wow. Well, it came out great, and I know your main focus was the construction and the printing and the little details, but the overall weathering and stuff looks great too. I think that roof is fantastic.
Yeah, that was chalks, just basically chalks, and then painted, because I know it's going to get handled, painted over with a dull coat.
Yeah.
So,
we have any questions for Phil about this?
Yes.
All right. Well, I know. Go ahead.
Yes. I'm assuming you're planning on putting this as a contest model.
At some point, I'll probably take this in. We have a meet coming up on Sunday. I'll probably take it in for the meet on Sunday. But it's pretty much going to get mounted to a module. At some point, I'll take the module and probably do the module. This is a 12 by 2 foot 3 inch module. So
yeah, I'm thinking at least you'll get on the podium.
No, it's coming out pretty cool. It's one of the things I love about modular, when you build a model railroad in your house, there are only 3 kinds of people that see it: you, your friends, and potentially visitors at an open layout tour who are model railroaders, and a bunch of people that are amazed but don't understand. Right? They're the people that, as you walk up the basement stairs, the one wife looks at the other wife and says, I understand, I'm with you. And it's so the beauty of doing modules is you take them out and the public sees them. And it's really cool to have people see them and really be amazed, and that, wow, you can do this as something this way. So I think it's kind of a fun part of the hobby. Anyway, that said, back to you, Greg.
All right, thanks, Phil. Now, next up, we have Bob Farquar. And I don't know why Chris puts that in there with your picture, Bob, but
Because I'm nuts.
go ahead and tell us about your boat.
Okay, this HO scale, the from Seaport Model Works 53-foot ferry that he had to build along about a couple weeks ago. This is my version of it. I did not like the sliding ramp on the side of the ships or the boat, so I just left it off. But he mentioned a bunch of things on build along that didn't come with the kit at all, but I just thought it came out okay anyway. I had a problem with the ladder on the very front, and I ended up using a fire escape ladder. It made of brass, and so anyway, it came out okay.
Yeah, I think it came out great.
Yeah, there you go. So that's it.
Wow. Well, it's beautiful. And so when you didn't put the sliding doors in, did you have to fill in that space?
No,
Okay,
No.
so the door just goes over that.
exactly.
Okay.
I didn't like the look of that door, but or that ramp or whatever it was.
Okay. Well, I know he mentioned in his build along that this stairway was probably the hardest part of the whole build.
And yeah, I didn't mind that. I didn't like the look of it at all.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well, and how did you like the rest of the build? How'd it go
Oh,
together?
it was great. Yeah, it was fine. Yeah, it was good.
Great.
Yeah.
All right. Do we have any questions for Bob?
I just had an observation. I did get the kit from him after he did all the demonstration. So it's sitting downstairs waiting for me at some point in time to build it. And I guess I'll talk to you when I do.
All right.
Get some
Okay.
ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, guys.
All right. Next up, we have Jeff Gordon. Jeff, are you there?
I'm here.
All right.
Okay, tonight's theme for me is box of sticks. I hunt around for craftsman kits, especially vintage ones that never got assembled. And that's what this is. A 30-year-old kit is supposed to build into 7 or 8 logging structures. And though I don't have a logging operation, I have a mining operation, and they used very similar structures for lodging the miners. And so this is the first of the approximately 8 buildings in that box. And it's the box, you open the box and it's assorted sticks and some plans and a handful, very small number of cast window parts. I'm going to have to scratch or purchase some additional windows. Also didn't come with any doors. So you can see in the lower right-hand photo there, the door is entirely scratch built from the sticks as well. My Northwest short line chopper got a big workout.
So it's like a mystery box.
Yeah, lots of high quality wood and a plan, and then you have to cut it all up, and you can choose to build bunkhouses, a cookhouse, a dining hall, an outhouse, a company store, and there's some others as well. And so I actually cut out 2 of them at the same time, just assembled one of them here. But these are all sticks. And I supplemented the framing a little, but realized it was not going to show. And then the wood roof was so neat that after I covered it up with tar paper, I said, that's a shame. And so I weathered this one a little bit by tearing away a corner and rolling back a corner so it shows the boards. I'm thinking on one of the others, I'm going to have it being in the process of being re-roofed with new tar paper so you can see all the wood board underneath.
Nice.
But, so, and then the only other variation from the kit is, of course, I gave it a little bit more of a foundation. The logging structures would have come on big skids so they could tow them onto a flat car when they moved to the next location. The logging did that. The miners didn't. So I took the heavy wood that they used for the skids and instead turned it into a foundation. Incidentally, all of the wood staining is hunter line stains. I really like the hunter line stains, and I really like how the wood came out. I did texture the wood, so if you look at it closely, you'll see that it looks like it has some grain in it.
Yeah, I was noticing that. What scale is this, Jeff?
This is O scale.
Okay. Yeah,
So
because
the
you can
buildings
really
are-
see that grain.
Yeah, yeah, it does show.
Nice.
It's about a 5 inch long building, 20 feet long.
Wow.
And then a smoke
And-
jack out of my spare parts bin. This is the other part of the sticks.
Uh-huh.
This is the Hunter Line trestle. Though following Hunter Line's instructions, I converted their straight trestle into a curved trestle.
Wow.
And modified it to follow the Rio Grande Southern prototype. So you'll see there are no diagonals between the bents. That's because the Rio Grande Southern didn't use diagonals between the bents. So it's much more open looking. And then the other thing is the little refuge platform up there is framed differently. The Rio Grande Southern had cut it back so that it wouldn't be destroyed when they ran a snowplow over the deck of the bridge. So I followed their style. And then the other thing about this is that I was very pleased. You'll see the rails are spiked to the deck and they came out really, really nicely. The one trick for me was that rather than trying to shove the spikes into the ties, I pre-drilled each time I was going to put a spike in. I pre-drilled with a smaller bit and then pressed the in so it's tight, but it didn't. Not a single one split. And there are no guardrails on there right now, partially because, believe it or not, many of the Rio Grande Southern's bridges didn't have guardrails or either on the inside or outside. And so I may leave it just like that, or I may try and add some bridge guards on it. But I like how it shows off the deck right now.
So
So
it was any complications in taking a straight trestle and building it as a curved one?
Yeah, the way I did that is the plans that come with the kit are full size. And so I photocopied the deck and then cut it into pieces so that I could, well, I traced, this was originally, you can see the start of scenery here. That was originally plain flat surface. I traced the existing track work, which was a consistent radius, onto a piece of paper. And then I cut apart the photocopy of the deck and taped it down to the tracing so that it followed the radius. Now, because this is ON 30 and the radiuses are kind of tight, that's a 21-inch radius turn. I had to cut it into 7 pieces to make it bend enough to get around. You know, the prototype would have used much longer runs, but that's what it took to get around a 21-inch radius curve. And what they are is 7 little tangents, and where they join, they're slightly slanted together. But as you can see, it doesn't jump out at you.
No,
it gives you a
came
nice
out very well.
continuous curve. Similarly, you can see the wooden guardrail on the edge there is cut similar to the tangents. And then the kit comes with a ton of nut bolt washer castings. So every time I cut them, it's got a nut bolt washer casting at either end of the piece of wood as well.
Well, I'm sure
Nice
it looks
kit.
just like theirs would have, yes.
Yep, and Hunter Line stains again gave it a nice weathered appearance.
All right, do we have any questions for Jeff about either of these?
Really beautiful work, Jeff. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, they did come out nice. I love seeing your stuff. All right,
Thank you.
next up we have John Sherwood, and I was on the YouTube feed, and John said he wasn't getting much of a signal, so I don't think John is with us. But I do have a little bit of information about what he has here. And this is in O scale, Jerry's tractor and small engine repair. I don't know whose kit it is, but unfortunately, John isn't here to talk about him, but it looks like it's a fantastic little scene, a little diorama scene. And he did it on all the way around. And I would love to ask him about his dirt and stuff We may be able to at a later time. I know he's been on the show before, but tonight he said he just didn't have very good connection, so he wasn't able to make it. But it looks like a beautiful job he did here with all the details and the texturing. So I hope sometime we can find out more about this. Next up, we have Jerry Sherwood. So Jerry, I know you're there. You're going to tell us about this shed, right?
Yes, this is a Northeastern Scale Models field office, which is going to end up on my layout at the back end. And it was a very nice little kit. This building's not very big. I made the roof removable. It does lift off. Believe it or not, you're actually seeing both sides of this kit. They're identical. And the fascinating thing about this kit is the shingles that came with it. The shingles from Northeastern are fantastic shingles. And what I had done was using different washes and stains. I stained the side, looked like a weathered green in that, and then using pastels. And then I attacked the roof with pastels to weather it.
And Gary, what scale is this in?
This is HO.
Okay. And we have another.
Okay, this was a fun little kit to put together. It's a Bar Mills kit. David Ravelli and Company Shipping and Storage. It's one of it's actually a very small building, and I painted it. It's the siding was stained and then weathered, and then a wash of yellow acrylic was put on top of it, and little light dusting with the pastels. The deck was the same method, bit of staining. Then I went after the roof with it's tar paper roof. The nail holes aren't showing up very well, but they are there. And it was weathered with soft pastels as well. It's quite an interesting little building. Funny thing is, I went online to look it up with Bar Mills, and they show no evidence of the kit whatsoever. So I don't know if it was a limited run.
Might have been. I got to admit, it's fascinating, that roof line over the garage door, where maybe it's cut back for a reason, who knows, but then that little part that sticks out again, I just find that very interesting.
Yeah, it was different.
Yeah.
Apparently it was Bar Mills, the owner of Bar Mills, made this kit and named it after a friend of his. So maybe it was a limited run kit, but I went online to see if I get some more information on it, and they don't even have it in their stock anymore.
Wow. Well, it's very interesting. I love the roof on both of them, as you say. Do we have any questions for Gary on either of the buildings?
I was just thinking maybe this is one, I think he did, you could pay so much money and each month you would get a new little kit sent to you. It was a one-off. Maybe it's one of those.
Oh, like a kit of the month club?
Yeah.
Could have been.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah, you should send him an email someday and say, hey, tell me about this. Where did you find it at a show or something?
No, apparently what happened a while back, a friend of mine, he sold his home and went and downsized. And what he did was he went from HO into N-scale, and I bought his remaining stock. And there was a large number of kits in there that came with it. So I've been building them.
I love friends like that.
Yeah, so do I.
All
Gary,
right.
this is Ron,
Yeah.
Father
Yes.
Ron. I built this same kit. It was one of the first kits I built. It, along with a couple of others, they were very inexpensive. That's why I started building this one, because it didn't cost a lot of money. I think it was like $25 or $30 for the kit.
Yeah, $24.95.
It was a great kit to build. I didn't use the signs. I just built the building.
Well, I followed the signs. These are the signs that came with the building. And if you go on Bar Mill's website, they show you how to apply signs. And these were sanded on the back, thinned out, and then glued, put on them. And then what I did was did a varnishing tool and just varnished them right into the siding itself. So it looks like it's painted.
And Gary, if I missed, which kit was this? Who was the manufacturer?
This one here is a Northeastern scale models.
Okay.
And it was a beautiful kit. It needed a lot of bracing inside because the walls are very thin.
Uh-huh.
But what really struck me about this kit is their shingles.
Yeah.
Like they're fabulous shingles. It's fabulous.
All right. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
And Father Ron, you piped in at just the right time because you're the next and last one up.
I'm ready to go.
All right.
This is the tower number 60, North Tower, North Fort Worth Tower. As I've mentioned before, I belong to the San Antonio Model Railroad Association. And one of the things that they don't have a lot of on their layout are the railroad buildings. And I thought the area of Fort Worth needed some sort of a tower on the layout. It's actually the tower and maintenance of the way shed right next to it. I built the maintenance of the way shed first. It was rather quick build. It's all out of wood. The tower itself is all out of styrene. The walls are about 80 thousandths thick, and there are actual 4 layers of 20 thousandths. The end scale architect brickwork is what's on the outside, and then it has about 3 layers of plastic, the styrene type of for sale signs on the inside to give it this firmness of it. The roof shingling, I know that you're going to be doing diamond shingling. I got to tell you, it is tedious. But I laid out the lines on the cardboard that I use, or the styrene I used underneath it, and I used the best BEST Berlinger Edgerly scale trains.
Bollinger Edgerly scale trains.
Yeah. Their shingles, and I like their shingles. They are self-adhesive. You pull the stuff off, and but once you push it down onto the plastic or cardboard, it's not coming up again. So you've got to be very careful about how you place it. This is not weathered yet. It is weathered now, and I'm about to send it down to Samara for their layout. It doesn't exactly follow the prototype. The stairs are Central Valley stairs. The actual prototype has 3 of the stringers. And I didn't have the patience to try to do wooden stairs from scratch. So I just used the Central Valley. All the windows on here are Northeastern scale lumber windows. They're injection molded plastic windows. And I cut out the mullions on the lower section. This is in 3 pieces. The roof is detachable so that it can be lit up. The upper level has an interior to it. The lower level does not. The railings on the stairs and the platform at the top are scratch built. And the base is 80 thousandths styrene. that I put underneath the whole thing. I used what do you call evergreen I-beams on the supports for the stairs.
Uh-huh.
I think there's another picture.
Oh, yeah, we've got this and
This is the back side on the left. And then this is the original picture.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
From the website. You can type in Tower 60, North Fort Worth, Texas, and there's a whole web page on this particular tower. Neither of these exist anymore. They were torn down. In fact, some of the tracks in the area have been pulled up. So, and I don't know when it was actually torn down, but you can see I tried to be as faithful to the model as I could. I don't believe when I took these pictures, I had the air conditioner or the electrical hookup yet on the side of the building. Obviously, the foundation in the photograph is much thicker than what I've used, but I think this will do for the display on the layout.
Oh, yeah.
The hardest part for me was trying to figure out how tall this building is. And I did have a tower that Walthers produced that's a very tall tower. It turns out it's 110 millimeters tall. The model is, and I thought, well, that's a good place to start. The hardest part was figuring out the proportions, how much of the building is the lower proportion and how much is the upper. And I thought when I first did some drawings, I thought, well, maybe the lower portion is 2/3 and the top portion is 1/3, but that's not quite right. And I think I ended up with fifths, 3/5 and 2/5 is what I ended up scaling to. The hardest part was the molding under the windows in the upper section.
Yeah.
That's several different kinds of evergreen scale lumber.
Wow.
Styrene strips, trying to figure out exactly how that goes. It took me a while to figure that out. I laid out long pieces and cut them and then made them diagonal. But even after doing that, where they come together and meet on the upper level, it still didn't meet. So I had to do a lot of backfilling with putty to get it to look right. So that's the model, and it's
well, you sure nailed it. And what's the building next to it? Just a little freight house, or
it's a maintenance of the way shed. There's it's had an unusual front door. You can see that front door there on the scale photo. I guess this to give a kind of a porch to the place so the guys could get in under the rain or the snow before they got into the building.
They were thinking of their employees. How nice.
Yes. And you can see that the one angled roof on the shed there was where the motor car was put in and out. So.
Wow. Well, I know you like working in all of your different mediums, Father Ron, and you sure did on this one. It looks fantastic.
Yes.
Anyone have any questions about this?
Yeah. So in designing this, you just had to estimate the size and then work from work till it looked about right, because I think you captured the proportions very nicely. I'm scratch building a building right now, but it has a lap strake wood siding, and I was able to determine the exposure on the lap strake siding, and so count the number of boards and actually get very close to the proportion of the building from scaling off of a known dimension. Did you have anything like that, or I assume you didn't count brick courses?
I actually tried blowing up the original photo to see if I could count bricks, but that was really just impossible. When you try to blow up something that's 150 or maybe 200 DPI, it just becomes out of focus.
Yep.
Yeah.
So what I ended up doing was basically using paper and cardboard and cut different heights until I got the proportions, what looked like it was right. I also had to figure in the size of the windows. These are HO scale windows, but Northeastern Scale Lumber Company's injection molded windows, you have only a few choices.
Yeah.
So I basically use the same window all the way around, and use that as part of a guess about the size of the windows.
Yeah, because windows also sort of come in stock sizes, so do doors. So that is
Right.
some help. And I ran into the exact same problem, if you remember, sometime back, my interlocking tower. I ended up scratch building all of the windows out of styrene because nobody made a window that was anything like the prototype window.
Right. So this was the closest choice I could find in about the right size. And so that helped to determine the sizes as well.
So
Well,
it
it sure
captures
came
the
out
proportions
matching it.
really well.
Yeah. All right, do we have any more questions?
Yes, I've noticed that the air conditioner seems to move around a bit. So have you been able to find an HO scale air conditioner?
Well, actually, I did. It is a 3D printed. There were a set of 5 of them I found online, and I've used them in several other models. But there's only the one air conditioner up there on the second floor. I would imagine the first floor is just vented. If they had fans in there for the equipment, they just vented it. The first floor really doesn't look like it's something that you would work in. Basically, it's just to house the equipment.
Yeah, that's right. Typically, the lower level of an interlocking tower is full of machinery and is not working space for people.
Yeah.
Well, it's just Texas. They probably don't need much air conditioning there.
I was lucky that the 5 air conditioners that I had purchased, this one fit the window exactly.
Wow.
I didn't have to shave it or anything to it. So you won't see it on the model because I basically took these pictures so I could get them to Chris before I had actually finished the model. I also put drain pipes on all 4 corners, and that's because if you look at this, the picture to the left, you can see that the brickwork needed some work after I put the 4 sides of the lower level together, and so the drain pipes sort of hide those mistakes there. So the creative work there to hide the mistakes.
Well, I've seen quite a number of people, including some very good modelers. They have vines creeping up the corners of their buildings sometimes.
Yes.
All right, everyone.
I've also noticed if you go back a bit, right there. I'm assuming behind the building that's a mug.
Yes.
Yes.
As some of you know, I'm a Roman Catholic priest, so you can see that I heart my white collar job.
Yes, I saw that. That's a cute mug. All right, so we're at the end of our September My Build. The next one will be in October. And Jim, did you say you know the date for that?
October 19th.
October 19th. So if you want to get any of your pictures of models you're building, models you've built, or anything that along those lines, email them to railrunner130@hotmail.com, and Chris will get you in the October show. And I also want to mention to anybody catching this on YouTube at a later date, if you ever have any questions about any of these models, you could always get in touch with Nutrax and they can put you in touch with the modeler directly. So I think that's it. Jim, I'll turn it back to you.
Actually, one quick thing. There is a question on YouTube, speaking of. For Father Ron, Gino's Trains wants to know how long did it take, how long did this one take Father Ron?
Golly, I didn't time keep track of how much time, but I've got to say it probably totaled out to about 3 months worth of evenings. So I don't know what that adds up to. I also worked on Saturdays and Sundays when I wasn't busy. So it was about a month's worth of work.
Wait, you work on Sundays?
I model on Sunday.
Well, thank you so much, Father Ryan, and Greg. Thank you very, very much for doing this and filling in tonight for Chris. We really do
My
appreciate it.
pleasure.
And to all of the people that participated and shared their modeling tonight, I really thank you so very much. This is what it was supposed to be. This is what we hoped that the My Build segment would turn into. And I couldn't be more pleased about everybody's participation and the explanations. I think what you heard tonight is why a lot of people enjoy scratch building, because it is a challenge. But the challenge is the fun of it. And figuring out the problems is the fun of it. And it can be quite stimulating, quite creative. And I think if you'll try it, you might really enjoy it.